The sun hung low over the dusty streets of Copper Creek, Arizona Territory, as Josephine Zimmerman's wagon wheels snapped with a sickening crack, sending her supplies scattering across the rutted road. It was 1875, and the 22-year-old had traveled alone all the way from Boston with nothing but determination, and the deed to her late uncle's general store clutched in her gloved hand. Now, merely a mile from her destination, she found herself stranded as townsfolk hurried past, averting their eyes from her predicament. "Excuse me," Josephine called to a passing gentleman, her voice hopeful despite the exhaustion of her 3-week journey. "Might you spare a moment to help?" The man quickened his pace, muttering something about being late for supper. Josephine sighed, tucking a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Her mother had warned her about the harsh realities of the West, the lawlessness, the danger, the isolation, but had failed to mention the simple coldness of people just trying to survive. As she bent to gather her scattered belongings, a shadow fell across her path. Josephine looked up to find a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. "Seems you've got yourself in quite a fix, madam," came a deep voice, warm as honey despite its rough edges. The stranger stepped forward, revealing a man in his late 20s with weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and the 6-shooter at his hip looked well-maintained but not flashy, the mark of a man who viewed weapons as tools, not statements. "I'm Luke Northcott," he said, tipping his hat. "Most folks just call me Luke." "Josephine Zimmerman," she replied, extending her hand. "I appreciate you stopping. Everyone else seems determined to pretend I don't exist." Luke chuckled, taking her hand briefly. "Copper Creek ain't known for its hospitality. Folks here mind their business and expect others to do the same." He knelt to examine the broken wheel. "This is beyond repair, I'm afraid. You headed somewhere in particular?" "My uncle's store, or rather my store now. Samuel Zimmerman's General Goods." Recognition flashed in Luke's eyes. "Old Sam was your kin. He was a good man. Town felt his loss something fierce. You knew him well. Well enough to know he wouldn't want his niece stranded at the edge of town." Luke straightened up and whistled. From around the corner came a magnificent chestnut stallion that trotted to his side without hesitation. "Thunder here can pull your wagon to the livery stable. We'll get you sorted." As Luke secured his horse to the wagon, Josephine noticed the way the townspeople gave him a wide berth. Some nodded respectfully, others crossed the street entirely to avoid him. "Are you the sheriff?" she asked, curious about the mixed reactions. Luke laughed, a genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "No, madam, just a cowboy passing through. Been working ranches up and down the territory for years now. You seem to make people nervous." "I've got a reputation for being handy with a gun when necessary," he admitted, his voice dropping. "Not something I'm proud of, but it keeps me alive." As they made their way to the livery, Josephine couldn't help but notice the stark beauty of Copper Creek. Unlike the crowded streets of Boston, the town spread out beneath a vast azure sky, buildings scattered like children's blocks across the valley floor. The liveryman, a gruff older fellow named Hank, greeted Luke with wary respect. "Northcott, thought you'd ridden on." "Had business up north, just got back." Luke helped Josephine down from the wagon. "Lady here needs a new wheel. She's taking over Sam Zimmerman's place." Hank's expression softened at the mention of her uncle. "Sam was fair to me when others weren't. I'll have your wagon fixed by morning, Miss Zimmerman." "Thank you," Josephine said, reaching for her purse. "What do I owe you?" Hank waved her off. "Consider it a welcome to Copper Creek." "Your uncle would have done the same." Luke gathered her bags. "I'll walk you to the store, it's not far." As they strolled down the main street, Josephine noticed how the boardwalks emptied before them. "Why do people seem so afraid of you, Mr. Northcott?" "Luke, please." He sighed, adjusting his grip on her bags. "I was involved in some trouble a few years back. Man drew on me over a card game. I was faster." His eyes met hers, gauging her reaction. "I don't look for fights, Miss Zimmerman, but I don't run from them either." Josephine considered his words carefully. My uncle used to say you can learn all you need to know about a person by watching how they treat those who can offer them nothing. Wise man, your uncle. So far, you're the only person in this town who's shown me any kindness at all. They arrived at a modest two-story building with Zimmerman's General Goods painted across the front. A thick layer of dust covered the windows, and a faded, closed sign hung crooked on the door. Uncle Sam's been gone 6 months, Josephine said, retrieving a key from her pocket. I came as soon as the lawyers settled everything. The door creaked open, revealing shelves half empty and covered in dust. Behind the counter stood a pot-bellied stove, cold and unused. A narrow staircase led to what Josephine assumed were living quarters. It's smaller than I imagined, she admitted, setting down her handbag. But it's yours, Luke said, placing her bags by the counter. That's more than most can claim out here. Josephine looked around, overwhelmed by the task before her. She'd need to clean, restock, learn the business all while figuring out how to navigate a town that seemed determined to ignore her existence. I should leave you to get settled, Luke said, already moving toward the door. Good luck with your store, Miss Zimmerman. Wait, Josephine called, surprising herself. Would you stay for supper? I have some provisions in my bag, and it's the least I can do to thank you. Luke hesitated, his hand on the doorframe. That's mighty kind, but folks might talk if I stay too long. Your reputation matters in a town like this. Let them talk, Josephine replied, lifting her chin. I'd rather be known for my kindness than my caution. A slow smile spread across Luke's face. Your uncle would be proud of that spirit. He closed the door and removed his hat. I accept your invitation, Miss Zimmerman. They cleared space at a small table near the stove, and Josephine unpacked bread, cheese, and dried apples from her travel bag. Luke got the stove going, the warmth gradually pushing back the evening chill that had settled into the store. As they ate, Luke told her about Copper Creek, which merchants were honest, which would try to cheat her, who held the real power in town. The bank's run by Edgar Whittaker, Luke explained, slicing more cheese. He's got his fingers in most businesses. Been trying to buy out this place since your uncle fell ill. Is that why the shelves are so empty? Partly. Sam refused to sell, so Whittaker made it hard for supplies to reach him. Folks started shopping at Palmer's store instead, not because they wanted to, mind you. Sam was fair with credit when times got tough. Palmer isn't. Josephine absorbed this information, mentally calculating the challenge before her. I have some savings, but not enough to fully restock right away. Might be better to start small, focus on what folks can't get elsewhere. Build from there. The conversation flowed easily as night fell. Luke proved to be well-read despite his rough appearance, discussing books Josephine had enjoyed and recommending Western authors she hadn't discovered yet. You surprise me, Mr. Northcott, she said as he described his favorite passage from Thoreau. Luke, he reminded her with a gentle smile. And don't let the dust fool you, Miss Zimmerman. Even cowboys can appreciate good writing. Josephine, she countered. Or Josie to my friends. Are we friends then? Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of kindred spirits despite their different backgrounds. I believe we are, she said softly. Luke left shortly after, promising to check on her wagon in the morning. Josephine explored her new home, finding her uncle's quarters upstairs simple but comfortable. As she prepared for bed, she noticed a journal in the nightstand drawer. Opening it, she discovered her uncle's neat handwriting chronicling his life in Copper Creek. The final entry, dated just before his death, read, If Josie comes, I pray the town treats her better than they've treated me these past months. She has her mother's beauty but her father's steel. She'll need both to survive here. Josephine closed the journal, tears stinging her eyes. She hadn't been close with her uncle. He'd left Boston before she was born, but his words made her feel connected to him across the divide of death. The next morning, she rose with the sun, determined to make the store presentable. She'd been cleaning for an hour when a knock came at the door. Opening it, she found Luke with a basket in one hand and her repaired wagon reins in the other. Mrs. Jenkins at the boarding house sent breakfast, he explained, handing her the basket. Said it was about time someone reopened this place. That's very kind of her. Word's gotten around that you're Sam's niece. Some folks were fond of him despite everything. Josephine invited Luke inside where he whistled at her progress. The counter gleamed, and she'd arranged the remaining merchandise to make the shelves look less bare. You've been busy, he noted. There's still much to do. I need to take inventory, place orders. She paused, noticing his travel gear by the door. You're leaving? Luke nodded, his expression unreadable. Got work at the Chandler Ranch, 30 miles north. They're short-handed for the spring roundup. Disappointment washed over her, though she couldn't explain why she should care that a man she'd just met was moving on. How long will you be gone? Month, maybe 2. He hesitated, then added, I could stop by when I return, see how you're settling in. I'd like that. Josephine smiled, surprised by how much she meant it. After Luke left, Josephine threw herself into reviving the store. She scrubbed every surface, mended the torn awning, and polished the front windows until they sparkled in the desert sun. By the third day, curiosity began to draw customers. Mrs. Jenkins, a plump woman with kind eyes, was the first to make a purchase a spool of blue ribbon to welcome back some color to this drab street. She introduced Josephine to other townsfolk, including the schoolteacher, Miss Abernathy, and the young doctor, James Howard. You're nothing like your uncle, Mrs. Jenkins observed as she helped Josephine arrange a display of fabric remnants. He kept to himself, especially after he got sick. I've always believed in the power of community, Josephine replied. My father taught me that business thrives when people feel welcome. Well, you've certainly made this place inviting again. Within 2 weeks, Josephine had established a small but loyal clientele. She extended credit to those who needed it, remembered children's names, and always had fresh coffee brewing for whoever stopped by. Not everyone welcomed her approach. Marcus Palmer, owner of the competing general store, made his displeasure known by spreading rumors about the quality of her goods. Edgar Whittaker, the banker, paid her a visit, offering to buy the store before you lose everything your uncle left you. Josephine declined politely but firmly. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Whittaker, but I intend to honor my uncle's legacy by keeping this store open. The banker's friendly facade cracked slightly. This town doesn't need 2 general stores, Miss Zimmerman. Palmer's serves our needs adequately. Then perhaps what it needs is 1 exceptional store, she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good day, Mr. Whittaker. After he left, Josephine consulted her uncle's journal, finding references to Whittaker's attempts to consolidate power in Copper Creek. Sam had resisted, and she suspected that's why supplies had been so difficult for him to obtain. Determined not to face the same obstacle, Josephine wrote to contacts her father had in Denver and San Francisco, arranging for shipments to bypass Whittaker's influence. It would cost more initially, but she calculated it was worth the investment. The first major shipment arrived a month after she opened, bringing fabrics, spices, tools, and books that hadn't been available in Copper Creek for years. Women flocked to the store for the fresh selection, and men appreciated the quality tools at fair prices. On a warm Tuesday afternoon, as Josephine was helping young Billy Thompson select a birthday gift for his mother, the store door opened. She looked up to find Luke standing there, his hat in his hands, looking more weathered but somehow more handsome than she remembered. You're back, she said, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. As promised. His eyes took in the transformed store now bustling with customers, shelves fully stocked, a checkerboard set up in the corner where 2 old-timers were engaged in a serious match. After finishing with Billy, Josephine approached Luke. The roundup went well enough. He gestured to the thriving business around them. Looks like you didn't need my help after all. Don't be fooled by appearances. It's been challenging. She lowered her voice. Whittaker and Palmer have made things difficult. Deliveries mysteriously delayed, suppliers suddenly unwilling to extend credit. Concern darkened Luke's features. Have they threatened you directly? Not in so many words. It's all very civilized. She smiled wryly. Besides, I've made friends. Mrs. Jenkins has practically adopted me, and Dr. Howard checks in regularly. Something flashed in Luke's eyes at the mention of the doctor. I've heard he's taken quite an interest in your welfare. He's been kind, Josephine acknowledged, wondering at Luke's sudden tension. As have you. Are you staying in town long? Hired on at the livery. Hank needs help breaking horses for the army contract. He seemed about to say more when the door opened again, revealing 3 rough-looking men whose hands hovered too near their weapons for comfort. Luke shifted subtly, positioning himself between Josephine and the newcomers. The oldest of the 3, a grizzled man with a scar running down one cheek, surveyed the store with calculating eyes. "This the place, boys," he announced. "Whitaker said we'd find what we need here." Josephine stepped forward, professional smile in place. "Welcome to Zimmerman's. How may I help you?" The men exchanged glances, seemingly surprised by her direct approach. The leader recovered first. "Need supplies for the trail: flour, coffee, ammunition." As Josephine gathered their items, she felt the tension in the store rise. Other customers quietly paid for their purchases and left, casting worried glances at the strangers. Luke remained by the counter, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. When the scarred man laid his selections before Josephine, he made a show of checking each price. "Mighty expensive goods for a backwater town," he commented, his tone deliberately provocative. "Quality comes at a price, sir," Josephine replied evenly. "But you'll find my rates fair for what you're getting." "That's so." The man leaned forward. "Palmer down the street says you're charging double for half the quality. Mr. Palmer is entitled to his opinion as you are to yours." Josephine tallied their purchases. "That will be $4.35. The man slapped a $5 gold piece on the counter with enough force to make it bounce. "Keep the change, princess. Consider it payment for the entertainment." His eyes lingered on her in a way that made her skin crawl. As they turned to leave, the youngest of the 3 deliberately knocked over a display of canned goods. "Oops," he sneered. "Clumsy me." Before Josephine could respond, Luke stepped forward. "You'll want to pick those up, friend." The young troublemaker looked to his leader, who assessed Luke with new interest. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "Well, if it ain't the famous Luke Northcott, heard you'd hung up your guns." "Just trying to enjoy a peaceful afternoon," Luke replied, his voice deceptively mild. "Which can still happen if your friend cleans up his mess." A tense silence filled the store as the 2 men stared at each other. Finally, the leader nodded to his young companion. "Pick him up, Tommy. We ain't looking for trouble today." Tommy reluctantly restored the cans to their pyramid, then followed his companions out the door. The scarred man paused at the threshold. "See you around, Northcott, Miss Zimmerman." He touched his hat brim in a mockery of politeness. After they left, Josephine released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Who were they? Dixon brothers and their cousin, hired guns. Luke's expression was grim. Whitaker must be getting impatient. They wouldn't actually harm me, would they, over a store? Luke's silence was answer enough. Finally, he said, "I should stay here tonight. They might come back." Josephine wanted to protest that she could take care of herself, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't about her capabilities, it was about a threat Luke understood better than she did. "There's a spare room upstairs," she conceded. "My uncle's old office." That night, after closing the store, they shared another simple meal. Josephine had become a regular customer at the town's small restaurant, and Mrs. Jenkins had taught her to make a passable stew. Luke complimented her cooking as they discussed the day's events. "Whitaker's getting desperate," Luke observed. "Your success threatens his control over the town." "It's just a general store," Josephine protested. "It's more than that now. You've given people options they didn't have before, credit when they need it, fair prices, goods Whitaker and Palmer can't control, plus folks like you." He studied her across the table. "You've built something special here, Josie." Hearing him use her nickname for the first time sent a pleasant warmth through her. I couldn't have done it without help. Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. Howard, even Hank at the livery, they've all supported me. Because you were kind to them first, Luke pointed out. People remember kindness out here. It's rare enough to be remarkable. My mother always said I was too kind for my own good. Josephine smiled at the memory. She worried I'd be taken advantage of. Has that happened? Josephine considered the question. Sometimes. Not everyone repays credit, not every friendship is genuine, but I'd rather be occasionally disappointed than permanently bitter. Luke's gaze softened. Your kindness is a treasure in a place like this. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Their eyes held for a long moment, and Josephine felt something shift between them, a recognition of feelings beyond friendship. But Luke looked away first, rising to check that the doors were secured for the night. Over the next few weeks, Luke became a fixture at the store. He continued working at the livery during the day, but spent evenings helping Josephine with inventory, repairs, and the account books. His presence seemed to discourage further visits from the Dixon brothers, though Josephine occasionally spotted them watching the store from across the street. Their evenings together developed a comfortable routine. They would close the store, prepare dinner together, and then sit by the stove discussing books, sharing stories, or playing chess on the set Luke had carved himself. Josephine found herself looking forward to these quiet hours more than anything else. Luke was thoughtful, intelligent, and surprisingly gentle for a man with his reputation. He listened when she spoke of her dreams for the store, offered practical advice without being condescending, and made her laugh with tales of his adventures across the territory. One evening, as spring gave way to summer, they sat on the small balcony outside Josephine's living quarters, watching a spectacular sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. I never understood why Uncle Sam chose to settle here, Josephine admitted, but now I do. There's something magical about this place. It gets in your blood, Luke agreed. I've tried leaving a few times, but I always come back. Will you try again? She asked, suddenly anxious at the thought of him leaving. Luke turned to her, his expression serious. Not without good reason. The air between them charged with unspoken feelings, and Josephine found herself leaning toward him almost unconsciously. Luke's hand came up to gently cup her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip. Josie, he whispered, I'm not the kind of man who deserves someone like you. Shouldn't I be the judge of that? She asked, her heart pounding. Their first kiss was tentative, a whisper of contact that deepened when Josephine's hands found his shoulders. Luke drew her closer, his arms encircling her waist with protective tenderness. When they finally parted, Luke pressed his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that since I first saw you by that broken wagon. What took you so long? She teased. Fear, he admitted. Fear that I'm not good enough, that my past would hurt you, that you'd be better off with someone like Dr. Howard. Josephine shook her head. James is a friend, nothing more, and as for your past, we all have one. It's what we choose to do now that matters. They might have continued the conversation, but shouting from the street below interrupted them. Luke was instantly alert, moving to the railing to look down at the commotion. A crowd had gathered outside Palmer's store across the way. Through the open doors, they could see flames beginning to lick up the walls inside. Fire! Someone shouted, and the town sprang into action. Men formed a bucket brigade from the water trough, while women guided children away from the danger. Stay here, Luke ordered, already heading for the stairs. I will not, Josephine replied, following close behind. Those are my neighbors. They joined the effort, passing buckets alongside townspeople who had once avoided them. The fire was eventually contained, though Palmer's store suffered significant damage. As the crowd dispersed, the store owner himself approached Josephine, his face smudged with soot and twisted with anger. This is your doing, he accused, pointing a trembling finger at her. You couldn't compete fairly, so you resorted to this. That's absurd, Josephine responded, shocked by the allegation. Why would I, because you're losing? Palmer interrupted. Your precious credit system is bleeding you dry, everyone knows it. Luke stepped forward. "Watch your accusations, Palmer. Or what, Northcott? You'll shoot me like you did Tom Riley." Palmer's voice carried across the now silent street. "Everyone knows you're in her bed. What better way to protect your investment than burning out the competition?" Before Luke could respond, Sheriff Dawson pushed through the crowd. "That's enough, Palmer. No one's accusing anyone without evidence." "Evidence?" Palmer's laugh was bitter. "Tommy Dixon was seen leaving her store just before the fire started." All eyes turned to Josephine, whose confusion was evident. "I haven't seen any of the Dixons today." "Convenient," Palmer spat. "Just like it's convenient that your store is untouched while mine burns." Sheriff Dawson raised his hands for calm. "I'll investigate this properly. For now, everyone go home. Palmer, make a list of what you've lost for the insurance company." As the crowd dispersed, Luke led Josephine back to her store. Once inside, he locked the door and checked every room before rejoining her downstairs. "Palmer's lying," Josephine insisted. "I would never, I know," Luke interrupted gently. "But this is Whitaker's play. He's turning the town against you. By framing us for arson." Josephine sank onto a chair, stunned by the escalation. "Why would Tommy Dixon help him? I thought they worked for Whitaker." "That's what makes it clever. Nobody would suspect Whitaker of burning his ally's store." Luke's expression darkened. "But if the Dixons were seen near your store today, that means they've been watching us, waiting for an opportunity. What do? We need proof of Whitaker's involvement." Luke paced the length of the store. "The Dixons wouldn't have done this without payment. Money leaves a trail." The next morning, while Josephine opened the store, Luke paid a visit to the bank under the pretense of depositing his wages. He returned with the news that Whitaker had withdrawn a substantial sum the previous day, far more than normal bank operations would require. "It doesn't prove anything," Luke admitted, "but it's suspicious." Josephine had her own news. Mrs. Jenkins came by. She said she saw Tommy Dixon talking to Whitaker behind the saloon last night after the fire. She thought it strange enough to mention. "Still circumstantial," Luke sighed, "but it adds to the pattern." Their chance for concrete evidence came unexpectedly that afternoon when Dr. Howard rushed into the store, out of breath and clearly agitated. "Josephine, Luke, thank goodness you're both here. I've just treated Tommy Dixon for burns on his hands and arms. He was delirious with pain and laudanum, talking about the job and how the banker would pay extra for the frame-up." "I don't think he knew what he was saying." Luke's expression hardened. "Where is he now?" "At his camp outside town. His brother and cousin brought him in, then took him back after I treated him." Dr. Howard hesitated. "I shouldn't be telling you this, doctor's confidence and all that. But I don't hold with arson, especially not when innocent people might be blamed." "Thank you, James," Josephine said sincerely. "We'll be discreet with the information." After the doctor left, Luke turned to Josephine. "I need to find Sheriff Dawson. This might be enough to make him question Tommy properly." "I'm coming with you." "Josie, it could be dangerous." "This is my fight too," she insisted. "Besides, the sheriff is more likely to listen if we both present the case." They found Sheriff Dawson at his office, reviewing witness statements about the fire. Though initially skeptical of their claims, he agreed to ride out to the Dixon camp to question Tommy about his injuries. "But you two stay here," he ordered. "I don't need civilians complicating an investigation." They reluctantly agreed, but as soon as the sheriff rode out of town, Luke saddled his horse. "We'll follow at a distance. Something doesn't feel right." Josephine borrowed a horse from the livery, and they trailed the sheriff by a quarter-mile. As they crested a hill overlooking the small valley where the Dixons had made camp, they saw Sheriff Dawson confronting the oldest brother while Tommy sat bandaged by the fire. "This could get ugly," Luke murmured, dismounting and helping Josephine down. "Stay behind me." They crept closer, keeping to the cover of scrub brush and boulders. From their position, they could hear the raised voices clearly. "Don't appreciate accusations, Sheriff," the eldest Dixon was saying. "Tommy burned himself cooking, that's all." "Then you won't mind if I ask him directly," Dawson replied, moving toward the injured man. What happened next occurred so quickly Josephine barely had time to register it. The Dixon cousin drew his gun, but Dawson was faster, shooting him in the shoulder. As the man fell, the eldest Dixon pulled his weapon. Before he could fire, Luke stepped from cover and put a bullet in the dirt at his feet. "Next one won't miss, Dixon," Luke called. "Drop it." The standoff lasted only seconds, but to Josephine it felt like hours. Finally, Dixon lowered his gun, rage twisting his features. "You're making a mistake, Northcott." "Only mistake was trusting Whitaker to protect you," Luke replied, keeping his weapon trained on the man as he approached. "Sheriff, you might want to check Tommy's saddlebags. If Whitaker paid them, the money's likely there." Dawson, recovering from the surprise of Luke's appearance, did as suggested. From Tommy's bags, he retrieved a considerable sum and a note in Whitaker's distinctive handwriting detailing payment for services rendered. "This changes things," the sheriff said grimly. He turned to Josephine, who had joined them once the shooting stopped. "Miss Zimmerman, I owe you an apology. Seems you've been set up quite thoroughly." With the Dixons in custody and Whitaker's involvement exposed, the tide of opinion in Copper Creek shifted rapidly. Palmer was forced to publicly retract his accusations, and Whitaker, facing criminal charges, fled town before he could be arrested. The scandal rocked Copper Creek, but from the chaos emerged a stronger community. Josephine proposed that she and Palmer combine their businesses rather than compete his experience, and her fresh approach creating something better than either could manage alone. After initial resistance, Palmer agreed, particularly when the bank's board of directors appointed Josephine to replace Whitaker temporarily until a permanent banker could be found. Through it all, Luke remained by her side, his steady presence a comfort as she navigated her expanding responsibilities. Their relationship blossomed in the open now, no longer shadowed by threats or suspicion. On a crisp autumn evening, 6 months after Josephine's arrival in Copper Creek, Luke took her riding into the desert to watch the sunset from a mesa overlooking the town. "Hard to believe how much has changed," Josephine mused as they spread a blanket on the rust-colored earth. "I came here just hoping to honor my uncle's memory. Now I'm helping run a bank, managing a thriving store, and—" She smiled at Luke, finding a kind of happiness I never expected. Luke took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "You've changed this town, Josie. Your kindness gave people permission to be better than they were. We changed it together," she corrected. "Your courage made my kindness possible." Luke's expression grew serious. "I've been thinking about the future. With Whitaker gone and the Dixons in territorial prison, things are settling down, but I don't want to settle." "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box, intricately carved with desert wildflowers. "I mean this town needs permanent leadership. Someone with vision, compassion, and strength." Opening the box revealed a simple silver ring set with a small but perfect sapphire. "And I need you, Josie, if you'll have me." Tears sprang to Josephine's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man holding it. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "I'm asking if you'll marry me," Luke confirmed, his voice catching. "I know I'm still just a cowboy. You're not just anything, Lucas Northcott," Josephine interrupted. "You're the man who stopped when everyone else walked by. The man who saw value in kindness when others mistook it for weakness." She cupped his face in her hands. "And yes, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Luke pulled her close. "Your kindness is my treasure, Josie, the greatest gift I've ever received." They were married that winter in the newly constructed town hall, with half of Copper Creek in attendance. Mrs. Jenkins wept openly. Dr. Howard gave the bride away, and even Palmer raised a glass to their happiness at the reception. 2 years later, Josephine gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Luke's mother. By then, their joint ventures had transformed Copper Creek from a struggling outpost to a prosperous community with a school, a proper church, and a reputation for being uncommonly welcoming to newcomers. Luke never returned to his gun for higher days. finding satisfaction in ranching and helping Josephine manage their business interests. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings after Elizabeth was asleep, they would sit on their porch overlooking the town and marvel at how a broken wagon wheel and a simple act of kindness had changed the course of their lives and the fate of Copper Creek forever. "You know," Luke would often say, holding her close as the desert stars emerged overhead, "folks still say you're too kind for your own good." And Josephine would smile, remembering their first days together. "Being kind was the smartest thing I ever did. It led me to you."